Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the best kept secret couples have kept from one another? The husband in a very high stakes divorce managed to hide 2 apartment complexes, an oceanfront penthouse in a very expensive city, and an offshore oil rig that were held into offshore companies that the wife did not know about. It only came out very recently, about 2 decades later, when husband died and left some of that property to their 2 sons, who were able to see the property histories. Not a lawyer, but my husband's uncle, they're close to the same age, was going through a divorce. His wife had just packed up her stuff and their kids and moved out one day while he was at work. Come to find out, a few weeks before she left, she'd won a $5,000 a week for life lottery ticket, and thought she could divorce him without splitting her winnings. That didn't work out very well for her. I need to play the lottery more. $5,000 a week and a divorce sounds pretty sweet. $2,500 and a divorce would have been just fine by me. Not a lawyer, but a bartender. And this ends in divorce. Married couple. Let's say their names are Joe and Susan. Are regulars at my bar. Friday, Saturday and Sunday they come in with each other. They are very touchy-feely and often are making out with each other while they drink some beers. Monday and Tuesday Susan comes in with an always changing cast of men, and is very touchy-feely on them, making out, etc. Wednesday and Thursday Joe comes in with an ever-changing cast of ladies, and is very touchy-feely on them, making out, etc. I figure that they must be in an open relationship in their marriage. I don't really care. And then proceed to let the next 7 years behind the bar wash over me. Then Susan comes in and tells me that she is divorcing Joe because he is a piece of shit who cheated on her. I act surprised and console her, and in doing such she explains that she is very virtuous and has never cheated on Joe or anyone else. A while later I see Joe at another bar, and he explains to me that Susan is divorcing him, but he is going to win the divorce. Is there a win in divorce? I dunno, because he had a private detective follow her, and she is a cheating itch. I act surprised, console Joe, and in doing such he explains that he is a virtuous person and has never cheated on Susan or anyone else. I shortly afterwards stopped working at that bar and grew a beard so less people would recognize me when I go out. In my dad's last divorce, it came out that his wife had been having an affair throughout her last 3 marriages. It was with her first boyfriend, who was also her stepbrother. Neither of them wanted to settle, and it ended up coming out in a hearing or trial in front of the court. But my dad was no angel, and had threatened her with a gun and beat my mom when they were married. So they both played themselves. Not a lawyer, but I found out about a best kept secret deal. A married couple got their gas utility account turned on at their house back in 1972, but the gas company never finished the paperwork properly and they were never billed. They got free gas service forever because their account was properly on, but the billing was never set up. Later they divorce and the husband gets the house with the free gas service. The gas company finally caught the problem sometime around 2014. The company could legally backbill the customer for only a limited time amounting to a few years of use, but the guy told the company to send the bill to his ex-wife. There was a clause in the divorce settlement that said that if the gas company ever was notified or discovered the free gas deal, the ex-wife would have to pay any past bill payments. The arrangement was made so that the wife could never alert the company to their error without having to pay herself. What was amazing was that 2 lawyers and a judge signed off on this while fully knowing that the guy was getting away with it. This couple were going through proceedings. She gets full custody while the divorce plays out. He gets to see his kids once in a while. Bastard was disguising himself as the kid's nanny. Yeah, no. Full old lady makeup, wig and dress. Weird. In Australia, a divorcing husband hid 10+ million by making an overpayment to the tax office. Auditors thought it was a tax payment, but 6 months later it was refunded with base interest rate. Since then auditors have caught on to this. Edit. Grammar is not my strong point. That was almost brilliant. As far as I was aware, he got away with it as he made sure the settlement was final and non-contestable. My aunt was a divorce attorney for decades before becoming a judge. The biggest whammer was a guy who was stealing his wife's undergarments and wearing them. She thought he was just having an affair. No one's gonna do it. Really, internet? No one? Well, looks like it's my turn to play devil's advocate and potentially end up looking like a creep. Is it really that big of a deal? I mean, the guy was getting a sexual thrill out of it. Is it the normal thrill? No. But he wasn't cheating. It all doesn't seem any worse than masturbating, just more odd. The only possible thing wrong with it is that he took his wife's undergarments without permission. I will just jump in and let everyone know that not all divorces end in one of the parties getting screwed over. My ex and I married way too young, and when we realized it was all falling apart, for various reasons, we agreed that our daughter would be our priority. Neither of us ever used our daughter against the other. Neither of us badmouthed the other in front of her, and we were both very fair with holidays and time spent with her. Our daughter grew up into an awesome person that has a great relationship with both of us. Financially, my ex did not want to bleed me dry. And I wanted to make sure that she had enough child support to really help. In the short term it probably cost me more, but over the long term I probably ended up better off financially. So not all divorces end up with bitter ducked up people. Not a lawyer. But part of my previous job was reviewing the details of divorce decrees for people trying to get money to start businesses. They are usually pretty generic. Especially in no-fault states. About 10 years ago I get this one where it was an at-fault state at the time of the divorce. And it laid out the whole backstory. The husband was a physician and the wife was a hairstylist. The husband lied about having a long-term disease to the wife and her family. He used this lie to leave his job and stayed home for years while the wife took on multiple jobs and tried to support him on her income alone. They found out he was lying and she filed for divorce. He was ordered by the judge to immediately seek employment as a doctor and pay the wife alimony based on his theoretical salary. Not a divorce lawyer. But a friend of mine went through a tragic divorce. He owned part of a small business. And he was good with his money, so he sold his shares and moved to Florida. Basically semi-retired but still doing an occasional gig to support his 2 kids and get a little spending money. A few months into retirement his wife goes to him and tells him that she would like to experiment having sex with a woman. He says that is fine, probably assuming he would get a threesome. Instead his wife started having a full-on affair with this other woman. A few months into this their marriage has fallen apart and they get divorced. For some reason the wife got custody of the kids. He is doing his thing. Rebuilding his life. And got a job. And making his payments to his kids. Suddenly their quality of life is clearly starting to deteriorate. And they moved from a nicer house to a trailer park. Turns out the other woman was using the money that was supposed to be going to the kids to get gender change surgery. As the story goes, to buy herself a pen 15, but I'm sure it was more than that. Luckily the guy got his custody back. And there are all sorts of shenanigans at parent-teacher conferences and stuff like that. I suppose they are also contributing to the Florida man stereotype. Not exactly the answer you were looking for. But my parents' divorce took an ungodly amount of time, and therefore, money. My mom found out about 10 years after the fact that her lawyer and my dad's lawyer were colluding to drag the case out as long as possible. Mom didn't want to have to deal with dad, so she never went after the lawyer. Too bad in hindsight. I'm in the middle of a documentary series about a high school teacher that began cooking meth without telling his wife about it or about the money he made. I'm not done with it yet, but it's a very compelling story. 10/10 great documentary. Couple is getting divorced. Guy gets worried that she won't return the engagement ring, so he tells his attorney that he switched it for a fake without telling her. Attorney checks in with client a while later, who then asks her to stop proceeding because we're laughing again. Then she asks her client, did you tell her about the ring? Was she laughing then? This other one though. Guy doesn't want to break up with his girlfriend. She keeps nagging him about marriage, but he doesn't want to marry her. So he tells her they'll have a destination wedding on a tropical island with a local ceremony and it will be very romantic. And they do. Except he just hired some resort staff to pretend to officiate a marriage ceremony and no marriage contract was ever drawn up. Guy dies years later. Wife finds out she was never married and is not in the will. But really, it's not the secrets. It's the mundane bullshit. Attorney gets a fax from his client's ex-wife's attorney. So and so promised to buy and build beds for the children for when they came over to visit one weekend, but he didn't and they had to sleep on couches. Please ensure that your client does this. Okay. That's a valid complaint. But not one that needs to be communicated between two attorneys who charge $450 per hour. East Coast husband had a listed income of $1.50 cheated on wife 10 times. Almost at the end of the divorce process, it was learned that husband had another family in Seattle, a different name and another $14 salary in tech. His vested stock options under the second identity were worth $214. How was he discovered living the double life? Seattle wife posted a picture on Facebook and tagged him with his West Coast name. East Coast wife similarly posted a photograph of him. The facial recognition assigned him a possible name, his West Coast name. The two wives got in touch. But wait. There's more. He has a wife and family in the Czech Republic and moved there to avoid family court and is currently being pursued for extradition. Not a lawyer, but my parents. Divorced when I was born. Over the next 5 years, dad proceeds to take mom to court to pay less and less in child support. He had us for about 30 HRSWK. School days were almost entirely on her. When I was about 12, he starts bringing her back to court. According to her, he was paying about $100 more for the 4 of us. Finally, she got sick of it. Had her lawyer look into his finances. His, now deceased, parents gave him $200,000 for our college educations. He put it into stocks and had $40,000 left. Judge heard this. Case ended. Edit, he got that money in roughly 1985. Before we were born. And was forced to take out the remainder and put it in a savings account by the judge in 2010. Roughly. Is there any reason that they'd tell the lawyers if they have kept it secret from the partner? Perhaps to get advice about what if they get to know that situations? There are 2 people in this world that you should never lie to. 1. The EMT when he asks what you took. 2. Your lawyer. He should know everything so he is at least half prepared when shit comes up. Most lawyers are legally not allowed to say so. Don't get your hopes up for accurate response, if any at all. So, not a lawyer. But let me tell you a very sad story that happened to a friend of mine. Wife was married before to rich guy and they get into a bad car accident. And rich guy dies. Wife keeps his last name and has some money. She shacks up with my friend, who had a drinking problem. He owned a small business that made a boatload of cash. Flash forward to when I know him. 12 years later. He tells me that his wife is divorcing him. And that he put everything in her name. They have a child who is 10, which was an accident. She admits to cheating. And says she conned him into the house and everything being in her name, and that she still loves her deceased husband. And that, my friend, was nothing like her ex. She then said he has to move out. And that she wants half of his business and is going to suck him dry of whatever money he has left. My buddy was borderline suicidal. And was prescribed some drugs which he became moderately addicted to. In addition to the massive additional amount he now drank. Remember. Alcoholism. I couldn't believe she basically used him and got him to put the now paid off house in her name. The car. Everything. She was way hot and he was not. So maybe that has something to do with it. It was completely devastating. Especially after all that time. Not a divorce lawyer, but my friend told me about a secret that came up during her divorce. 4 years they had trouble with a trash pickup just skipping their house, and a lot of times she would call and complain. Then she filed for divorce and they were going through some type of mediation, and it came out that he was just too lazy to take the trash cans to the curb and she would believe him when he said he had done it. Don't know if this counts and I am not a lawyer. Buddy of mine got divorced. He has a contracting business and was doing quite well. During the divorce proceedings they decided to sell the business and divide the proceeds. They sold it for over $2 million. She got 60% in lieu of alimony. Well, the selling of the business triggered a tax audit, and when all was said and done they owed over $700,000 in back taxes and penalties. So now we have a $700,000 debt and back to court they go. She is claiming it was his business so he should pay all the debt. He is claiming since she took 60% off the business she should take 60% of the debt. Well, the judge agreed with him. She ended up with 60% of the debt, and unfortunately for her she had pretty much spent all the proceeds from the divorce and now owes $420,000 to the government plus accumulating interest. He had used the money he got from the divorce to start a new business and paid his debt off right away. Not a lawyer, but a story I got to learn about over a couple years of being a gas station attendant. A regular customer of mine, father, and his 2 children, younger son like 10ish, older daughter like 12ish, came into the store I worked at very regularly. Like clockwork on the way to drop said children off at school during the school year, and to babysitter during the summer. Over the couple years I greeted this trio Monday through Friday and was able to hear about activities they were in, and got to get to know all 3 of them on a somewhat personal level. In this learning, at some point, I did learn from the father that he had full custody of his children because his ex-wife didn't want them. And he traded almost every single one of his assets he accrued over the years to make sure his kids had the love and stability they needed. Ex-wife got the more expensive car, the house, the boat, and half of their bulk savings. When I learned of this, all he did was smile and said, "For my kids, that itch can have all the wealth. They are all that matter to me." And all I wanted to do was cry. For a while she concealed that she'd accidentally burned down the kitchen. He was no longer living there after he found out, which only happened because he happened to drive past the house. She accused me of telling him and otherwise colluding with him to ruin her. She also threatened to strangle my secretary. She's in my top 5 crazy client list. One of my firm's clients said $1 million. Not a lawyer, but in my divorce, my now ex stated that she had child porn that I downloaded 15 years previous and she kept in a folder at work. 2 points. 1. This was downloaded from KZAA with the title Christina Aguilera's Lady Marmalade, which is what I was actually trying to download. 2. Since they were only half downloaded, I stopped the download when I noticed it wasn't music. She finished the download and printed them out. She admitted she printed them and had them at work. My lawyer and her lawyer were friends, and they laughed about the fact that if she pressed to have them admitted to court, she would be guilty of possessing child pornography. Really late to the party, but my friend's dad was a divorce lawyer. He told us a story about a couple who fought over beanie babies and hid the rare ones from each other. Divorce lawyer here. A man gambled away $70,000 of their marital savings. Wife didn't know until she filed for divorce. She hit him in the head with a hammer and was arrested. I am here to see some variation on that. It was all a misunderstanding, and they really did still love each other. But who's going to let that slip and risk losing all those sweet lawyer fees for doing the divorce? If someone is determined to keep something a secret from their former spouse, they will also keep it a secret from their lawyer. Stay away from marriage and convert your assets into gold bars and hide them somewhere in the remote wilderness. Lawyers on here. Does having a prenup significantly make a difference when someone gets divorced versus not having one? They take a lot off the top in taxes though, and even more if you take a lump sum. I can't imagine it being over $1,250 a week. That's good, but not amazing early retirement money. Are you talking about the 5,000/week story? Because you made a top level comment. If you take the 5k week you would get around $2,500 week after taxes. In the US, that's $120,000 a year. My wife and I don't make that combined before taxes. No one really talks about after tax money when they talk about their salary. So it's more like $240k a year. Almost anyone would be able to retire on that. I wonder a lot that why man, and very rarely woman, loses his property even he owned it before getting married. Would a prenup really help in this scenario? That's exactly what a prenup is for. FB is mentioned in 9 out of 10 of the divorces our family division handles. Facebook is probably 70% of the reason my uncle divorced his wife. They were already pretty on the rocks and weren't living together. But they were friends on Facebook and he kept seeing all of the fun stuff that she was getting up to without him. Which pissed him off to no end. I think she might have also been openly flirting with other men. Which also pissed him off. There was this whole drama that played out because she went to local country music festival and did not invite him along. And she posted pictures of it on her FB. That was, from what I understand, the last straw before he officially filed for divorce. I got a buddy who practices divorce law and he told me this doozy. So this guy comes into his office saying he needed representation and my buddy who was fresh from law school was willing to take on any paying case. At this point the guy states that he is the victim and his wife blindsided him with divorce paperwork less than a year into their marriage. I guess the dude's wife had some serious cash and would be flexing some muscle. After a few weeks he gets a call from an arbitrator from the wife's attorney who set up a meeting and thinking that they were interested in settling in the best interest of the husband. The dude and my buddy show up and I guess things went completely sideways. Come to find out the dude had a bunch of nasty secrets he failed to mention, which included 1. A nasty online porn habit that cost him a couple of decent jobs. 2. 2 kids with another woman that he failed to mention to his wife about and was in the hole for back child support. 3. The biggest one that was the nail in the coffin. Wife suspects that the husband was cheating so she checks his phone one night while he is sleeping. Guy was definitely talking to another woman, who happened to be the 15-year-old daughter of one of his ex-co-workers. These exchanges included lots of nudes. The wife was smart enough to get the explicit texts but not the photos since it would have been distributing child porn. At this point the husband goes pale white and begins to sweat and the lawyer asks for a minute to speak to him. My buddy asks if any of these are true and the dude is just stammering, clearly figuring out that he is screwed. My buddy tells him it is in best interest to just settle and not pursue his wanted settlement. After this is said and done the guy ends up rolling over and admitting defeat. My buddy ended up hiring debt collectors because the dude refused to pay through normal means.